Henrietta Lacks was an African-American woman. She was born Loretta Pleasant in Roanoke, Virginia, on August 1, 1920. Her life, though tragically cut short, would go on to touch countless others. She became an unknowing pioneer in medical science. Her cells, taken without her knowledge, became the first immortal human cell line. This line is called HeLa. It has helped scientists make huge discoveries. Henrietta's story is one of incredible scientific progress. It is also a story about important ethical questions. Before she was a source of medical marvels, Henrietta was a person. She was a wife and a mother of 5 children. She loved to dance and cook. Her family remembers her as vibrant and caring. She worked hard on the tobacco farms of rural Virginia. Later, she moved to Turner Station in Maryland. Few knew then that her body held a secret. This secret would change medicine forever. Understanding her life helps us see the human side of science. Her cells helped develop the polio vaccine, cancer research, AIDS research, and gene mapping. Yet for decades, Henrietta herself remained largely unknown. Her contribution was uncredited, and her family was unaware of her immense impact. Henrietta Lacks, originally named Loretta Pleasant, spent her early years in Clover, Virginia. This was a small rural town. Life there was simple, yet often hard. She was raised by her grandfather, Tommy Lacks, after her mother died. This happened when Henrietta was only 4 years old. The Lacks family worked as tobacco farmers. Henrietta learned the rhythms of the land from a young age. Despite the hardships of life in the segregated South, Henrietta was known for her lively spirit. She was described as a beautiful and energetic young woman. She loved to dance and enjoyed simple pleasures. She had a kind heart and was always ready to help others. In 1941, Henrietta married David Day Lacks. Together, they started their own family in Clover. Their early married life was filled with the joys and struggles of raising children. The promise of better work and a different life eventually drew Henrietta and Day away from Virginia. They moved to Turner Station, Maryland, near Baltimore during the Second World War. Her life was one of community and connection, even as challenges lay ahead. In 1951, Henrietta Lacks was just 30 years old. She was a young mother with 5 children. Her life in Turner Station was busy. She was raising her family whilst her husband worked. Then, she started to feel unwell. She told her cousins about a knot inside her. She experienced unusual pain and bleeding. These were worrying signs. For a while, she tried to ignore them. She had a young family to care for. Eventually, the symptoms became too severe to ignore. Henrietta sought medical help. She went to the Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. It was one of the few major hospitals in the area that treated African-American patients. After several examinations, doctors delivered a devastating diagnosis. Henrietta had a very aggressive form of cervical cancer. The news was a terrible blow to her and her family. Dr. Howard Jones was the gynecologist who examined Henrietta. He found a large, malignant tumor on her cervix. The standard treatment at the time was radium therapy. Henrietta underwent these painful treatments. She bravely faced them, hoping for a cure. During her treatment, something else happened. A surgeon took 2 samples from her cervix. One sample was from her tumor. The other was from healthy cervical tissue nearby. These samples were sent to Dr. George Gay, a cancer researcher at Johns Hopkins. Dr. George Gay was a dedicated scientist. He was head of tissue culture research at Johns Hopkins. For decades, he and his wife, Margaret Gay, had tried to grow human cells outside the body. Their goal was to find a cure for cancer. Most cells they cultured died quickly. This made long-term study impossible. They needed cells that could survive and reproduce indefinitely in a lab. When Henrietta's cells arrived in Dr. Gay's lab, his assistant, Mary Kubitschek, prepared them. She labeled them HeLa. To everyone's astonishment, Henrietta's cancerous cells did not die. Instead, they started to multiply at an incredible rate. They doubled their numbers every 24 hours. They were robust and seemingly unstoppable. Dr. Gay realized he had something extraordinary. He had found the immortal human cell line he had been searching for. The unprecedented nature of HeLa cells was astounding. They were the first human cells to grow continuously in culture. This meant scientists could finally study human cells in detail. They could conduct experiments that were previously unthinkable. HeLa cells could be frozen for long periods. They could be shipped to laboratories around the world. Dr. Gay generously shared these cells with other researchers. Sadly, Henrietta Lacks never knew about this incredible discovery. Despite the doctor's efforts, her cancer spread rapidly. On October 4, 1951, Henrietta Lacks passed away. She was only 31 years old. Her cells, HeLa, were just beginning their extraordinary journey. The discovery of HeLa cells opened up a new era in medical research. Their ability to replicate indefinitely was a game-changer. Scientists finally had a reliable and consistent supply of human cells. This allowed for standardized experiments across different laboratories. One of the earliest and most significant uses of HeLa cells was in polio research. Dr. Jonas Salk used them to test his polio vaccine. HeLa cells were crucial in proving the vaccine's effectiveness. This led to the near eradication of a devastating disease. HeLa cells became essential tools in understanding cancer. Scientists could study how cancer cells grow and behave. They could test potential anti-cancer drugs on HeLa cells in the lab. Beyond cancer, HeLa cells were vital in virology. They helped researchers understand how viruses infect human cells. The cells were even used to study the effects of radiation, which was important during the Cold War era. The contributions of HeLa cells extended to genetics and cellular biology. They were used in the development of techniques for cloning cells. They helped in mapping human genes. Over the decades, HeLa cells have been involved in tens of thousands of scientific studies. Nearly every significant medical advance has, in some way, benefited from the use of HeLa cells. Despite the monumental scientific value of HeLa cells, their origin story is fraught with ethical problems. The most significant issue is the lack of informed consent. When doctors at Johns Hopkins took samples from Henrietta Lacks's tumor, they did not ask for her permission. She was not told that her cells would be used for research. In the 1950s, the concept of informed consent was not as developed as it is today. However, this does not excuse the oversight. Henrietta Lacks was an African-American woman. She received treatment in a segregated hospital during an era of widespread racial discrimination. This context is crucial. Medical research has a troubling history of exploiting vulnerable populations, particularly Black communities. Henrietta's case, while different, shares elements of this disregard for the autonomy and dignity of Black patients. Her cells were taken, and her identity was largely obscured for decades. Furthermore, Henrietta's family was kept in the dark for many years. They did not know that her cells were alive and being used in research globally. For more than 2 decades after Henrietta's death, her family knew nothing about HeLa cells. They mourned Henrietta, the wife and mother. They were unaware of her extraordinary cellular legacy. The discovery came about in the 1970s, quite by chance. Scientists, wanting to learn more about HeLa genetics, sought out Henrietta's relatives. They needed to collect DNA samples from her children. This was to help understand the cells better and to address issues of contamination in other cell lines. The way this was handled caused considerable confusion and distress for the Lacks family. Imagine learning that your mother's cells were alive, that they were being grown in labs all over the world. Imagine finding this out without proper explanation or support. This was the reality for Henrietta's children, Lawrence, David Jr., Deborah, and Zachariah. Elsie, Henrietta's eldest daughter with developmental disabilities, had died in an institution years earlier. The family struggled to understand the complex science. They also grappled with the emotional impact. Deborah, in particular, became deeply invested in learning about her mother and her cells. She yearned to understand the woman she barely knew. The family felt exploited. Their mother's cells had helped so many, yet they themselves often lacked access to basic health care. They saw companies and institutions profiting from HeLa. The publication of The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot in 2010 brought Henrietta's story to a global audience. It shed light on her life, her cells, and the ethical issues involved. The book sparked widespread discussion about informed consent, patient rights, and racial disparities in medicine. This increased awareness was a crucial step towards acknowledging Henrietta's contribution. It also brought attention to the struggles of her family. For the first time, many people learned the human story behind the famous HeLa cells. In the years following the book's publication, there has been significant progress. The Lacks family began to receive the recognition they deserved. Henrietta Lacks has been honored in various ways. Buildings have been named after her. Conferences have been held in her memory. More importantly, there has been a shift in how the scientific community engages with her legacy. In 2013, the National Institutes of Health in the United States reached an agreement with the Lacks family. This agreement gave the family some control over how Henrietta's genomic data is used. This NIH agreement was a landmark decision. It meant that researchers wanting to use HeLa genomic data for NIH-funded projects must apply for access. A committee, which includes Lacks family members, reviews these applications. This ensures the family has a voice in how Henrietta's genetic information is used. Henrietta's light, once hidden, now shines brightly, illuminating both science and humanity.